Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. I hope everyone is okay. Today I want to talk about a question that sounds simple but is actually very complex. What is the American dream and is it over? We hear this phrase everywhere in politics, in literature, in music, in everyday life. So, the American dream is often described as the promise that anyone, regardless of where they come from, can achieve success through the hard work, ambition, and determination. It is the idea of upward mobility, of building a better life, of prosperity as possibility. But when we look more closely, especially through literature, the American dream becomes less stable. And sometimes it becomes illusion. Where did the idea come from? Let's look at the historical background. The American dream is tied to national mythology. It is connected to the ideas of freedom, self making, reinvention, but it gained particular cultural intensity in the 20th century, especially after the First World War. The 1920s in the United States were marked by rapid industrial growth, economic expansion, consumer culture, and technological development. On the surface, it looked like prosperity, right? But underneath that prosperity, there was also a deep moral and existential crisis. And this tension is exactly where literature becomes important. One of the most powerful literary critics of the American dream appears in Fitzgerald's The Great Gatsby. I'm currently working on the chapter book, actually, where I examine the American dream in The Great Gatsby as a modernist rupture, a moment where the national myth begins to crack. In the novel, the American dream is not simply success. It becomes entangled with desire, conception, illusion, and alienation. Jay Gatsby, the main character, if you remember, like in the film, it was acted by Leonardo DiCaprio, if you remember. So Jay Gatsby appears to embody the dream. He reinvents himself. He accumulates wealth. He builds a grand life. But his wealth is unstable. His world is performative. His dream is rooted in longing, not reality. Fitzgerald represents a society obsessed with appearance, lavish parties, excessive consumption, and the spectacle. But behind that glamour lifestyle, there is an emotional emptiness. The Valley of Ashes, one of the novel's most powerful symbols, represents the moral and spiritual decay hidden behind economic prosperity. That small distant light at the end of Daisy's Dock, it represents hope, but it is also representing distance. The dream, in this sense, is always slightly out of reach, always deferred, always projected into the future. What makes The Great Gatsby especially significant is its modernist sensibility. Modernism questions stable meaning. It questions national myths. It questions progress narratives. In the aftermath of the First World War, many writers felt that traditional moral frameworks and collapsed. So the American dream, which had once functioned as a unifying national promise, becomes unstable. In my research, I approach this not as a symbol of success or failure, but as an ideological fracture. The American dream is both produced and dissolved within the same narrative. It is built and dismantled, and that tension still resonates today. So, is the American dream really over? This is a difficult question, I know. Some argue that dream has always been uneven, accessible to some, structurally limited for others. Issues of race, class, gender, immigration status, all complicated that the idea that comes is purely merit-based. Others argue that the dream has transformed rather than disappeared. Maybe it is no longer about wealth. Maybe it's about stability, maybe it's about dignity, maybe it is about visibility. But literature reminds us of something important. National myths are never neutral. They shape how people imagine possibility. They influence who feels included and who feels excluded. Why this still matters? When I teach American literature or when I work on African American children's literature, I see how the idea of the dream continues to operate, sometimes explicitly, sometimes quietly. The dream can inspire, but it can also conceal inequality. It can motivate ambition, but it can also produce anxiety. That's why I find it so important to read texts like Great Gatsby, not as a nostalgic story of 1920s, but as ongoing critiques of modern capitalism and desire. The American dream is not simply a historical idea. It's a living narrative, and literature allows us to interrogate it. As I mentioned, I'm currently developing this argument further a book chapter where I analyze the Great Gatsby within the framework of modernist aesthetics and ideological critique. I explore how Fitzgerald symbolically represents post-war America through special constructs, elite social circles, new wealth figures, and the marginal spaces. For me, this project is part of a larger question. How do national myths survive? And how do they fracture? So, is the American dream over? Maybe the better answer, the better question is who was it ever fully available to? And what does it mean to dream in a society structured by inequality? These are not simple questions, I know, but the literature gives us the tools to ask them more honestly. Thank you so much for listening. I will actually be taking a short one break because I'll be in Madrid attending a conference on Edgar Allan Poe and the Gothic literature. I'm looking forward to sharing that experience with you in a future episode. See you soon. Take care of yourself. Bye.